GMAC. Welcome to Paradigm Live, your weekly place to catch up on all things cyberbrokers. I'm Mike Carterell, Community Manager and Friendly Leftover.
And I'm Brianna. You might know me as Lady Diamond Hand. I help with lore and marketing here at CyberBrokers.
And we're excited to talk about lore today, something we haven't done for a while.
Yes.
As always, let's start with what is CyberBrokers?
Yes, so if you're new here, here at CyberBrokers, we're a metaverse-native media and entertainment company, and we're working here to build an entire universe for you here in the Paradigm through our beautiful collectibles, NFTs, our content, interactive experiences. So we're excited to have you here, and this is a perfect Paradigm Live to give you a taste of that universe that we're building.
The content, the engaging content piece.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So make sure to check out our website, cyberbrokers.com, which is, again, an experience and a half.
Yes.
That will draw you in and keep you active browsing for quite a while. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, cyberbrokers with an underscore. We have two primary collections, cyberbrokers, the original SVG on-chain NFTs, and then Genesis mechs, which are kind of like Legos you can assemble and use your 3D assets in 3D worlds. Back to interactive experiences.
Yes.
So let's talk about what's been going on. This week, we're going to talk about the events coming up. We have an exciting Twitter space with Rhett Mankind and Josie on Wednesday. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm-hmm. We also have our NFT Security 101 class with Boring Security DAO. So we put instructions for how to join that in our Discord. This is a CyberBroker holders only event. So be sure to check that out in announcements and sign up. That should be a really good class. Kind of make sure you're all up to date on all your security protocols.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in a minute as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to talk about metaverse field trips, something now that we have 3D assets we're doing more of and people should engage with. And then the big one today, we've got Nick from the Writer's Room, also known as Requiem or Venus, who's going to have a conversation about version beta stories with us.
Yeah, I'm super excited to dive in. So if you're been around for the lore, this is like a great refresher, and we'll have some fun conversations, some back and forth. You can ask questions. And if you're new here, again, this is like a great way to quickly get you up to date on where we are.
Yes.
You can jump right in.
Exactly. So you don't have to read it all. You can get the core ideas and then start participating.
Yeah, we'll give you the Spark Note, the entertaining Spark Note version.
The lore TLDR.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So this week, office hours this morning at 8 a.m. and tonight at 8 p.m. Central. You know, if you ever have any questions, things you don't understand or ideas, that you want to suggest, pop on in. Merk or I are always there. On Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, we have the Twitter space with Rhett, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Game night. Come chase us around. Josie usually shows up, and it's always fun. I'm usually the first person to die. I keep trying to change that pattern, I guess is the right word to say. And then on Thursday, as we mentioned, the NFT security class, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So we're totally excited. Rhett Mankind has been a CyberBrokers holder for quite some time, and he had some great success with his Turbo meme coin, and how he created it more specifically with using AI. Basically, he asked AI how to create it. He interacted with his community for choices on Twitter, and it exploded. So we've got a Twitter space with him and Josie on Wednesday to primarily focus on the AI aspects of it. So as an artist, how is AI, influencing your decisions on creative process? What tools are you using? What are the challenges? How are things changing? So that's on March 17th, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central, CyberBrokers Twitter space.
Yeah, that'll be a good combo.
Yeah, I loved, how open and transparent he's been, and he did it with the community in a public space, which was the really awesome part of everything.
Yeah.
So get that on your calendar. That's in Discord for you to make sure you can subscribe to. Let's talk about, so Boring Security DAO, a really cool organization. They're funded by the ApeCoin DAO. So they've got money to give these classes, and it's all about how to not get rugged or stole from, right?
Yeah, I think this is just like a great opportunity. Again, we are so protective of our community here at CyberBrokers, and this is just an opportunity to make sure you can protect yourself. And I think this will just be a really great class, and it's a great opportunity for our holders.
Yep, I'm signed up. Everyone should sign up. There's always something you can learn that will help, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So again, it's on Wednesday, 2 p.m. Where was the information again?
So if you go to our Discord and our announcements channel, there is a few steps you have to do to get into this class, because you do need to be a CyberBrokers holder. It's free. So our announcements channel should have that quick list of things to do to sign up. It's simple. It's basically going into their Discord and just verifying you are a CyberBrokers holder. But you can check that out. And we're excited to see everyone on the 18th.
Yep. And I believe it's also in the Discord event too. So if you register interest there, all the steps are there as well as the shared Google Calendar.
Yep. So
multiple places you can find. We are whipping through this quick today, which I love because I want to get to lore. Metaverse field trips. So last week, and actually for the last 2 weeks, we've been going on these field trips, which is basically other organizations, host events, and it's fun being in the metaverse with others, right? And interacting and having some, task to do, or listening to some, talk that's occurring. So we've scheduled these metaverse field trips, which are leveraging other people's events and engagements. And I think I missed it, but I heard Based's event on Friday with the release of oh boy, I'm forgetting the word of it. The phallus, it's NSWF.
I have no help here on this one.
Hold on, I can find it.
Pictures from it though, and video.
The shaft. There we go. So they released a 3D world called The Shaft, and the whole goal, it was like an obstacle course, and whoever could climb to the top, achieved something. So Merk and crew told me it was a blast. Everyone was dressed in their 3D mechs and watched them jumping around. And I heard CEO Tim, one of the holders, CyberBrokers holders, actually got to the top.
Awesome.
So these are what we're talking about. We want to get a space for CyberBrokers, kind of like a launching point, so everyone knows a single place to go, where we can all gather, and then we can jump off into these other experiences. So we want to create that world with the community. So if you have ideas or 3D skills, pop into the creators general channel and let's build that together.
Yeah, I'm excited that we have these 3D assets, our mechs, for all these awesome things we can build and go and explore and do. So yeah, I think we're entering a really fun era here at CyberBrokers.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be things that we CyberBrokers create, that's content and experiences and assets. But this particular one, I really want the community involved with, because it's going to be their space.
Yes.
Right? So I want them to feel comfortable and have in it what they want. So go engage in that conversation. That, I believe, is it. So let's move directly into CyberBrokers lore, and let's bring up Nick from the writer's room, who is also the owner of Venus and Requiem. Say hello, Nick, and want to do any introductions?
Hello, Nick. Yeah, I'm from the writers' room. I've been there for a long time. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh yes, and if you're new here, writer's room, like just how we were talking about getting the community involved in building this, world for us to launch in. We're super big on making sure our community is building right alongside us. So the writers room, they are a group of CyberBrokers community members. You do not have to be a holder to participate, which is, again, if you're interested in kind of writing, world building, going back and forth on, the physics of a fictional world, feel free to hop into our Discord lore channel and ask about the writer's room. But they help us brainstorm ideas for our stories, our lore, our world building, any little tidbits of story and lore that come up. So just to preface what the writer's room is if you're new here.
Perfect. So let's do a little overview of lore first, and then we can get into the versions and then talk about version beta. So to set the stage, our lore is broken up into versions. We release it in versions. This is something that was kind of retroactive, so when we came out with the original lore, it didn't have versions. So we're calling the original lore from last year version alpha. And each version, has a theme to it. So there's going to be, some set of concepts that will be explored. Is that the right way to put it, Brianna?
Yeah, I think of our versions almost like seasons. I think of like a TV show. So sometimes the TV shows are, very linear. Sometimes they're like a Love, Death, Robots vibe where there's like set little short stories or vignettes. But they all are kind of wrapped up into one season or version like package. So version alpha again was our initial version. And now we're entering into version beta, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yep. And then each version or season has multiple stories in it. And I think the other thing, the reason version has been picked is because one of the primary locations of our stories is the Paradigm Live, the CyberBrokers metaverse. And versions equals changes in Paradigm Live. So it's a little bit like software release to some degree.
Yes, we had a little fun with the naming conventions on that one.
Yep. Anything else, Nick, you wanted to add there that we kind of might have missed?
No, you covered the important bits.
Okay. And we're trying to keep this in summary fashion to make it digestible as well. Okay, so we've got the overarching principle of what lore is. It comes in versions. Each version has multiple stories and a theme. So let's review alpha lore. So what was the setting for alpha lore?
Yes. Nick, do you want to maybe cover the original concept of this?
The original concept, we did a lot of things in broad strokes, but particularly in the first chapter, we said that the world is not our world. Like I'm going to call it semi-post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
But then we went right into Era Novum, and that just showed the life of the CyberBrokers universe, the paradigm. Because when Spice first enters, you have this juxtaposition between the world she lives in and this world where buildings are flying off, there are giant robots, and then we're introduced to Ken. And I think an important thing was establishing that she was a drifter, he was a broker, and they were not the same thing. They had different roles and outlooks on how things operate.
Yeah.
And right after that, like after that was established, then things really start to pick up pace, and they don't really stop again until the beta version, come to think of it.
Yeah.
It was all action all the time, yes.
So yeah, like I think, like you said, post-apocalyptic is a good description. So it takes place like pretty far in the future. There's been a giant ice age. There are survivors, but not many. And they're living in these like underground like bunkers, not very, you know, colorful, happy existences.
And they're called drifters.
Yes, and then the survivors, so humans like you and me who managed to make it through the ice age, they again they live in this kind of dark, boring, bland world. They're just trying to survive. They're basically just like fueling their bodies, making sure their, you know, compounds are running. And then we put them into the paradigm, which, like Nick said, is Aeronovum is the capital of the paradigm, which is this rich metaverse. And you kind of, when you read the story, it's the juxtaposition of this, you know, very harsh utilitarian world. And then they enter into this metaverse where it's colorful and bright and busy, and there's all these like sprawling cities and robots running around, buildings flying off.
And it's an escape from reality for them.
Exactly. So in our story, we talk a lot. I mean, the metaverse and the industry is a big buzzword, but in our story, the metaverse has become essentially where people live out of necessity, because their lives in these bunkers are, you know, basically you're just surviving there.
They're stuck inside. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you enter into the paradigm, that's where most people are actually existing. That's where they're living. That's where their lives are. So those are, again, the drifters, and our version alpha story is told through Spice's perspective. So she's a drifter. She, you know, has to eat, you know, the bland utilitarian compound food. She has to, you know, go out and clean off the, you know, solar panels to make sure the compound is running. But, you know, every day she, you know, jacks into the paradigm, and, you know, that's kind of where our story really starts picking up pace.
And where her life actually exists for the most part, because the rest is just things she's got to do to get into the paradigm.
Exactly. She's basically just making sure her physical body is fine in real life, but the paradigm is, again, where all her friends are. So we mentioned we meet Ken very early on in our story, and Ken is a cyber broker, so that's our clutter collection is named after. The cyber brokers were the first 10,000 volunteers to actually say, like, okay, we want to be the guinea pigs, upload our brains into the metaverse. And the idea was the government would freeze your body and they'd put your brain up into the metaverse. And the idea was they do this while they tried to figure out this whole ice age situation. So the idea is you'd still have your physical body and, you know, be able to come back to it. But of course, we wouldn't have
a promise. Yes.
Yes. But of course, we wouldn't have a story if everything went according to plan. So something went wrong, and the cyber brokers have been trapped in the paradigm for, you know, the past 200 years. So while, you know, these drifters have, you know, been living, you know, normal human lifespans, cyber brokers have just been existing off in the paradigm for almost 2 centuries. So it's an interesting, again, this conflict of, you know, these like almost like immortal beings now the cyber brokers have become, because they're trapped here, versus the drifters who have to like log in and out every day.
So let's recap that quickly. So the real world sucks. There's an ice age going on.
Yes.
There aren't many humans left. They're called drifters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a digital world that that drifters can escape into that is much better than the real world. And it's populated with cyber brokers, 10,000 of them, that were supposedly an experiment, but something went wrong.
Yes.
And we've got 4 main characters. We talked about Spice, the drifter, who's kind of the main character in the story. Ken, her sidekick.
No, that's a fair assessment. For most of the story, anyway.
Yeah. The love triangle between, well, let me back up. Then there's Zinc, who's another cyber broker, and the 3 of them kind of start off with a bunch of stories and adventures. Saleya, another cyber broker, ends up getting added towards the middle.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little bit of some love triangles going on between the 4 of them.
Yes.
Because what story wouldn't be good without love triangles?
Yes, multiple love triangles.
Or squares in this case, you know.
Yes.
Okay, so we have our setting, we have our main characters. Let's talk about the storyline.
So yeah, this is what Nick hinted at. It kind of just, we got a lot that happens in our version alpha story.
So the first thing we learn is that it was a lie, and brokers are really AI.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not necessarily their brain uploaded. They're all programs, but they're sentient, intelligent programs, right?
They're sentient, they're intelligent, they have free will, and it's not just, it's like DNA code. So maybe it's not like a human brain, but it's like we haven't quite hammered down the proper terms, but it's like genetic AI, if that makes any sense.
So it's possible they could be representatives of real people.
Not so much. It's like they were real people. If they were real people, they're not the same person at all.
Yeah.
Very advanced AI. So ChatGPT on major steroids.
That's a good way to put it.
ChatGPT version 1000.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's a huge storyline that gets explored.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's kind of like our main inciting point here is the CyberBrokers, to our knowledge, they most of them, maybe some knew, we don't know, but
the majority didn't. Yeah.
For sure, Ken and Zink and the majority did not know that they were AI. So Spice actually uncovers the secret, and this is kind of like our inciting point where there's a lot of questions. So like, why was this hidden from them? Like, how is the secret kept for so long? Like, why are they AI? And this is kind of the jumping off point for our story is kind of.
And let's not forget, this all started because Spice wanted to do a good deed.
Yes.
To go on a date with Zink, yes. So back to the love story.
Yes, exactly. It all comes back to the love story.
Yeah. So for a couple centuries, TPL was basically nirvana for these brokers.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden there's an existential question that's rocking the boat.
Exactly. And I think it's cool, I think, how the story kind of, and these are like themes that we want to explore. So if you're kind of interested in this whole like AI debate, these are themes we want to explore in our future stories. But this idea of like AI and like sentience, and it's like a conversation happening now. So like, at what point when does AI come so advanced like that they almost are people? So it brings up a lot of these existential questions. So if those are things you like to kind of dive into, that's kind of where we're going to end up, I think, going with a lot of these stories, exploring this idea of humanity and AI.
And Sheldon, fun fact, the whole AI plotline was written in before AI exploded.
Yes, exactly. This was revealed, I think, May, almost a year ago. So like last May. So
well, it was revealed a year ago, but it was thought of and planned before that.
Yes. So do we predict the future here at CyberBrokers?
I don't know. I'm
going to go with yes.
Yes.
No hedging.
Okay, so we've got that plot line. We find out about a secret organization called Shadow that's trying to take control of the TPL because they have beliefs on how it should be run, and they want to enact those beliefs.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of our main villain of season 1, is this shadowy organization called Shadow, who they, once this truth is revealed, they kind of, they are not a big fan of everyone knowing that CyberBrokers are AI. So our characters are kind of running around, and Ken ends up getting captured. There's kind of all these conflicts, but the main idea is they discover this organization who wanted to keep that the CyberBrokers were AI a secret. And in the background, they've been kind of trying to stockpile control of the TPL. They've been trying to reach that 51% in order to kind of move forward with their vision of a new paradigm. So our gang is trying to, kind of to stop this. They're trying to, thwart their plots to take over the paradigm.
And it's also kind of a way to describe centralized versus decentralized. So Shadao represents centralized control, whereas the main characters and most of the brokers and drifters believe in decentralized control.
Yeah, we touch on a lot of themes that are, I think, really relevant in the Web3 community. So that was kind of the main thought behind this organization is, again, there's the secret stockpiling of control because they believe they know what's best. So this is a big conversation we had in the writers' room as well. Is Shadow they think they're doing what's right. They think that they're not just seeking power for the sake of power. They think they're going to help the paradigm. They think they know what's best for everyone.
And that's one of the things I liked about Shadao is that they weren't mustache twirling villains. Yes, they were the bad guys without question.
Yeah.
But they weren't just being evil to be evil, because that's just not interesting, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They had a goal. Most people didn't agree with it, but they had a goal.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So
their methods were less than ethical.
Yes. Yeah. So the rest of the stories in version alpha lore were the characters, trying to prevent that, and they went through all sorts of experiences and excursions to stop that from happening. And this is where I think the writers' room, really comes in. Is the writers' room created, paths for the community to explore and make decisions on how we got there. Is that accurate way to say it, Nick?
I think that's a fair assessment, and I think it also is worth saying that we gave you all of these decisions. We thought you were going to do one thing, and then you were never consistent. Some days you were bloodthirsty, some days you were sweet. So there was just as much stress for us in that voting as there was for y'all.
Yeah, so we had these quests in version alpha, and basically the outcome of these quests would determine how the story would turn out. So us in the writers' room, we were waiting with our breath held, being like, oh, okay, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? And again, when you're writing kind of the different options that can happen, in the writer's room, we'd always be like, oh, of course they're never going to choose this option, and then of course.
I feel like anytime we said that, they did the complete opposite.
Yes. I think one of the ones which we thought would never happen, but actually, I think ended up being one of my favorite, plot twist moments from version alpha was one of our last quests is the main character, Ken. Basically, he is captured by Shadow, and there's they basically have to unhook him from this memory altering machine, and the community had all these paths to essentially different Kens, because depending on which path they went in, they could kind of mess Ken's brain up a bit depending on which memories they changed. And again, we wrote 4 different Kens, and we assumed that everyone would immediately kind of realize, okay, this is the normal Ken, and they'd go with that one. And I think the second one we thought might happen is there was a memory loss Ken. So he acted the same, but he just forgot certain things. And then we had 2 other options which were just completely off base for Ken, complete personality changes. And we're sitting there and we're they're probably going to end up with either, they'll be normal Ken or memory loss Ken. And the community just went crazy for, I think we ended up, we've called him
Roid Rage Ken. Yes.
Roid Rage Ken.
So it ended up being a fun, again, as I think Nick can speak on this too, us working in the writer's room and crafting these characters and stories, it ended up being such a fun addition, because we had this Ken up until this point, who he was, and all of a sudden now he had a complete personality change. He's kind of this a little bit, over the top, like egotistical gamer bro, which is so opposite of what he used to be. And he's like annoying, but like in a funny way. Like everyone just ended up like loving this like annoying like bro-y Ken.
I didn't. I'll be the exception. I was upset that they all went that way.
I mean, at the first I was, and then like I don't know, it added like this like extra layer of like humor to like the dialogue, especially like after that, like there's so much like insane stuff that happened in terms of plot.
Okay, so I'm gonna call the ball on this. We need to move past Alpha Lore because we could talk here for days on Alpha Lore. So the key points here, the writer's room existed with holders in it that were helping shape the story. If you have any interest in being involved in that, contact Brianna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The holders themselves made choices during Alpha Lore, and I think you'll see that concept continuing. So you
Mm-hmm.
not only read, you participate and get to help change the story yourself. The last thing that was in the storyline was this mysterious virus was revealed that affects brokers, but wasn't really clarified, and that kind of rolls over into version beta.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the ending of version alpha.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that, Nick and Brianna?
Yes.
The ending.
The ending. Yeah, so this is kind of where our main characters, they don't agree with what Shadow wants to do to the paradigm. And there's this whole conflict of, again, this idea of, do you go for complete decentralization, complete centralization? And our community, we had them vote on a lot of things, and we ended up somewhere in the middle. And this was where our main characters ended up rebooting the paradigm into version beta, and they actually lessened some of the controls into this kind of middle ground of, decentralization, some centralization. And we unlocked all these cool new beta worlds.
And let's not forget, put all of our heroes in semi-conflict with each other.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of like, we'll see in this version beta, which we'll dive into, is you'll see some of the same characters. If you don't end up reading version alpha, it's okay. Like you can dive right in and you'll get a very good sense of the personalities of the characters. Yeah, Shadow for now, at least, who knows? They did not get control. We've entered this new era of the paradigm installed by actually our community.
Yep. And we still aren't clear on exactly what else Zinc changed.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some mystery around exactly how Zinc rebooted this.
Yes.
And then another key point, I think, is that all the brokers and drifters didn't realize that version alpha was like the training program.
Mm-hmm.
And version beta is kind of like the training wheels coming off some.
Yes. Version alpha is like the tutorial zone, if you're thinking about it like a video game. And now they're in it. There's no tutorial.
No turning back.
Yes.
Yep. But again, they didn't realize it was the other part, So there's still things happening behind the scenes that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move into version beta. So we have 3 stories, and we should probably talk about a little bit of the change. So version alpha was a series of sequential stories. We called them chapters. You kind of had to read through them, one at a time in sequence. But what's changed with version beta?
So we've entered into this. They're short stories or vignettes. So we've had 3 so far. Again, you can read these in any order you like. You might notice some hints of the other stories in this, but you do not have to read them in any order. And this is something that you'll notice in this new version beta, these more vignettes that will all if you read them all, they'll all kind of tie together, but they don't have to be read in a certain order. So if you miss out on a few weeks, or you're kind of just jumping right into our universe, again, you can start reading right here, and at your leisure, any order you would like, and you can do that for the rest of this version. So we're hoping to make this like a really accessible season of lore for people.
And Nick, do you like the change to the intertwined stories versus sequential?
I didn't quite hear you, Carl. There was some blag on my part.
Sorry. Do you like the change of how it's like not sequential stories anymore? They're like independent.
I really do, because I like the plot of the Alpha season, but if I wasn't there the whole time, it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that can be scary for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I think back to Alpha season, I have to remind myself that I was there the whole time, so I always knew what was going on. Yeah. And that's not everyone.
You were masterminding it too, so.
Exactly. Except when we were doing community votes, because that was just stressful.
True.
But last night when I was preparing for this, I was rereading the stories, and I decided I'm going to start with the most recent story, the final boss, and then read it backwards.
Okay.
And there was some interplay,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, they each stood alone and they made sense by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't care about the Winner Circle, you can jump into any of the other stories and be fine.
Yes.
So the recommendation, if you haven't read any lore, start with version beta.
Yes. More digestible. Again, you can read them in any order. And so we have 3 stories so far in version beta. And each of these 3 stories represents one of 3 factions, which are going to be the main event of this version beta. So basically, the paradigm has been rebooted, like we've said. Now, all these new worlds are opening up. The paradigm has been, actually kind of like initialized. They're not in this tutorial zone. And with all these new worlds opening up, there's a lot of different opinions on kind of how the CyberBrokers should go about, organizing this world. So we have, the Wayfarer Bureau, which is, was established kind of by this council, a democratic council that our community actually put into place. They wanted a council, and they kind of want to go about, harnessing, all this like energy, and, there's all these new like games and missions and side quests in these new worlds. They want to kind of take that prosperity and, use that, to help like the council and grow like the paradigm in like a more orderly fashion. So this idea of like order and duty and prosperity. And then we have, Nick, you want to go?
Vignette about the council was probably my favorite. I liked all 3, of course, but the gaming the system was probably my favorite one, because I like lore, and there was so much lore packed in such a small space that was rather a joy to read.
Yes. So, and that was a thing too with these 3 stories, is everyone has very different preferences, I think, on what they love about world building. I mean, our story is definitely leans into sci-fi, like dystopian, but there's so many different types of sci-fi stories. So yeah, the Wayfarer Bureau was very much into this idea of like the political like games and intrigue, and like the mechanics of like running a world like this. So we established this whole like council system, and like, what does that look like? And what are the representatives? And there's an upper council and a lower council. So if you're into that kind of like world building of like, how do you set up like a government essentially in a world like this, and that idea of like kind of like that political espionage. That's
and the fact that the people that were kind of running the last world are trying to react and gain control again of the new world. Even though it's been opened up and moved towards decentralization, they're still trying to hold on to control.
Like that opening section where Altair was basically crippled by ennui because he was prepared for anything except this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's 51 talents in our collection, talents. So think of them almost as like innate jobs, like programmed into our cyber brokers. And one of our talents are the politicians. There are these monkeys. If you read their description on OpenSea, they were, test monkeys that something messed up their empathy in their brains and they gained sentience. But it's, again, told through this perspective of someone who had all this power and control in the first version, and now they're thrown into this whole new paradigm. And again, they're innately programmed to be these kind of unempathetic, like power hungry, beings. So like Nick said, exploring this idea of like, okay, now it's been kind of, the playing field has been leveled a bit, but right away people are already like, okay, how do I make it uneven again?
Poor Zinc's been thrown to the wolves in the process.
Yes. So
You know what they say, if you want to make an ivory tower, you got to shoot a few elephants.
and that's what this story is about. And Zinc was just a character from our version alpha lore. He's kind of established as like the leader, creator of this Wayfarer Bureau. And again, you do not have to read version alpha. You can jump right into version beta, but you kind of get a sense from the gaming the system story of who Zinc is as a person and why he might be the person tapped to kind of lead this new entity in the paradigm.
So we've got gaming the system. It's talking about the new government and how it's supposed to work versus how people are trying to influence it to work.
Yes.
And out of that.
And that one more major point before we skip away from that story. Let's not forget that it established that right now the drifters are not there, and that's causing a kind of chaos all in of itself.
Yes, good point. So no drifters.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads to the faction Wayfarer Bureau, which is all about more orderly methods for things.
Yes.
Which one do we want to pick next? Which story do we want to pick next? Nick, pick one.
Shepherds of Selenia or Solana. I never remember.
Okay, so this one introduced us to, and each of these stories is kind of trying to expand a little bit and talk more about different talents and different parts of the universe. So Shepherds of Selenia is about our sheeple and what the talent sheeple is all about, and explores how they act normally, or their default nature. Is that the right way to say it?
Their disposition. Let's call it a disposition.
There we go. Their disposition. And so we have a bunch of sheeple that are off exploring a new world in their mech, and that mysterious virus shows up and causes some havoc, right?
Yes. Like, well, first we established that sheeple are not so much, they're followers, but it's more out of curiosity than they need like a shepherd intrinsically, if that makes any sense.
Yes. They have like a sense of autonomy. They're just, like Nick said, very curious. You check them out on OpenSea. They're one of my favorite, just how they look. They're like they have their little sheep costume. And
this was actually, I know this was the first one, but I also even now think it was like the boldest choice to pick a sheeple as a main character for this vignette. Thought hadn't even crossed my mind, and then it's handled wonderfully.
Yeah, and I think that, if the last story was, again, this idea of like world building in terms of like government and structure and the political machinations of the world, the Shepherds of Selenia faction is almost like it's all about like freedom and exploration and this idea of like kind of like wonder, and it's kind of tied to this. Again, we tie it in the story to this sheeple who is wonderfully curious, and she just so happens to encounter this mysterious virus that we don't know a lot about. And it almost, she notices changes in herself that, for 200 years, she's acted a certain way or felt compelled to act a certain way. And now all of a sudden she's not constrained by, again, this kind of like innate sense of like duty associated with the talent. And we
It breaks down some of her barriers, so to speak. Yeah.
So this story explores this idea of talent and what does that mean to have a talent for your cyber broker, and kind of hints at maybe what this virus can do. And all we've been told about this virus is that it can be deadly to cyber brokers, but permanently deadly, because obviously we live in a metaverse and you can get demezed and respawn. But it's hinted that the virus might eventually lead to an end where there is no respawn, but that's all we kind of get, is that it's scary, even for cyber brokers who up until this point have been immortal.
And we also need to mention that part of the storyline of that sheeple is that after she's affected, she kind of goes on her own adventure and runs into Saleya.
Mm-hmm. So yes, Saleya was like a character from our version alpha story, and she, it was revealed, she's the one who was infected at the end of version alpha. So she's kind of isolated herself, put herself all the way in the far reaches of these new beta worlds because she's scared of hurting people she cares about. And she meets this sheeple.
Which was, I think, the last talent she was expecting to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
And be infected like her. Yes.
Yeah, that too.
So yeah, they're bonded together now. The fact they're both infected, and this faction is formed. So like Wayfarer Bureau was formed because there's all this chaos now without drifters, and everyone's kind of just loose in these beta worlds. So the Wayfarer Bureau was formed to bring like this sense of order and harness kind of this energy and power. The Shepherds of Saleya, they're formed out of this need to contain this virus. So
and explore, the curiosity part too.
Yes.
They want people to be free, but there's also something dangerous they need to control, and how they're going to balance that need for secrecy and control with their innate sense of people should be allowed to do whatever they want. It's going to be very interesting moving forward.
Yes. So there's this like idea of we need to go out and explore and kind of learn about this virus. Like, where does it come from? There's no answers. So they're searching for answers, and they're kind of tied to this idea we need to protect people as well. So this story kind of it talks about the formation of that faction and the sense of we need to solve this mystery, kind of.
It's a very odd juxtaposition. The faction that wants the people to be the freest is also the one legitimately containing the most dangerous threat in the paradigm.
Yes. Yes. So again, like they have a very different vision for kind of what they prioritize in this new version of a paradigm. So very different vibes, and again, the stories have very different tones and they cover very different things. So again, Wayfarer Bureau, I'd say, is a lot of like world building and like structure. Shepherds of Saleya, it's a lot more, I think, character work. So again, trying to kind of convey the different vibes of these stories as well. So maybe if you don't connect as much to one story, you might really love like the character exploration in Shepherds, or you might really love like this intense uncovering how this government is structured. And that's, again, another big initiative in this new version of lore is giving different genres and themes and all these stories. So
and viewpoints,
yeah, because again, we want there to be at least like one story that like really captures you, because again, everyone has different tastes and preferences and what they like to read. So you'll notice very different vibes.
So that brings us to the third one, the final boss, and basically a gamer's story. Someone who's all about the achievements and the dopamine hits, and and it's a great outline of someone who's trying to get into this exclusive club and what they have to do to get there, and they have to basically put it all on the line in the middle of a game that almost seems impossible to make it happen. Nick, you want to talk us through this one a little bit?
Sure. And first, I want to say whoever came up with the stained glass of Ken, that's one of my favorite things. I don't know why. I just
I
like
believe he goes by Mr. Ironic now.
Yes.
Mr. Ironic, Gentleman Ironic.
Gentleman ironic.
Okay, in this story, there's a lot going on action-wise, but that doesn't detract from the story. But it just shows you that the winner's circle is a lot more. I don't want to say goal-orientated, but more like I had something and then the thought bird just grabbed it. Like they're goal-orientated, but their goals are not geopolitics or containing a secret. It's just being the best.
Yes.
And then we have, I believe, it's Triple F, which was short for Fast Fingers.
Fast Fingers Freddy.
And we start in medias res where this dude's just ripping the heads off of stuff. And I believe they're in the wasteland, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a new beta world called...
It's the Warlords Challenge.
Yes. So yeah, it's called Wasteland. Sorry, my cat is popping up to say hi. But yeah, we've encountered this new beta world, and it's called Wasteland. So think Mad Max radioactive theme park. If that's any indication of kind of some of the new worlds that are going to be coming out. So yeah, this was our action story. So, very fast moving, and again, there is like a plot and a story, but again, it's a lot of action, fighting, like battle sequences. And this kind of explores this other side of the paradigm, which is, there's like an economic side to the paradigm. There's this kind of like mysterious virus, quasi-religious side. And then there's also the side of the paradigm where there are these missions that are going on, and you can play these kind of games and side quests like you would in like a video game, and earn credits and points and, loot and glory, which is kind of what the winner's circle is about. So, again.
And there's... Go ahead.
So like the shepherds, again, are grounded in this kind of purpose of containing this virus, and the Wayfarer Bureau is like, again, adding like this layer of like structure and kind of harnessing all this power. And then the winner circle, they're kind of off there, like, doing their own thing a bit.
And three things I liked that stood out to me about the story is first that we made Freddy a leftover, and then we explored the leftovers. And I'm gonna call it an inferiority complex. It's not the right word, but it's all I can think of off the right time.
Watch yourself.
I think we do call it a leftover complex.
The leftover complex.
We will rule the world. It's okay. You can keep using those words. We'll get there.
That's something. But Nick, if you want to discuss, like leftovers, that's, I think, if you're new to our lore, that's a good thing to.
And if you are new here, a leftover is a broker without an innate talent, and in some ways that is a weakness, but at the same time, it means they're much more flexible than your average broker. If you're a pilot broker, you're going to be, but we put you on the ground. That's not something used to. A leftover has much more flexibility in what they're doing, job wise, where they're doing it, and why they're doing it.
So I think that's the common misconception is, the other talents have a specific purpose, so to speak, and they have skills that help them with that purpose. It's not to say that leftovers don't have skills; they just don't have a built-in purpose.
Exactly. And the leftovers, they have the same 200 years that all the other brokers have had. And I think that, how do I put this? When I look at a leftover, I see someone who, if they're amazing at something, it's because it was a conscious choice. They decided to dedicate themselves to martial arts or mech piloting or exploring. They had to make an active choice to get that good, rather than someone who was naturally good at combat because they're a mercenary.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Leftover skill might actually be choice. The ability to make their own choices on what they want to do, whereas the other talents don't really have that choice.
And we kind of explore this, I think, and this is something, again, this idea that if you read all stories together, it kind of can paint like a really cool full picture, but you can read them separately. And I think you read Pandora's Box, this idea of this sheeple who's always felt this kind of like innate purpose, which again is like it's in her code because it's revealed she's AI. And this idea of like she gets infected by this virus and all of a sudden now like she's not confined by that as much. And I think you read that story, and then there's like this other story, The Winner Circle, which is about this leftover who never had that. And I think that's also like a really cool theme that when you read them together and you kind of see these two perspectives of, you know, this leftover, you know, he jokes about this leftover complex, like the other cyber brokers, you know, kind of make fun of the leftovers for, and this idea of like, no, like getting into the winner circle, this is now his purpose. He's given it to himself. And then you have Pandora, who almost like now loses this like innate coded purpose to her talent. And I don't know, it's like a cool juxtaposition, I think.
This is an interesting conversation because it almost makes you question if the virus is a bad thing.
No.
Okay, let's not go there. Nick, finish us off with the final boss story.
And one more thing I want to touch on is they added a radiation meter, and that showed that this world is different from everything else we've had to deal with. But then we push through the rest of the story. They're fighting a whole army of drones and other such monsters. And then I do love that it introduced us to some new weapons, because really the only thing before this that we knew was canon was the barrage rifle. And now we got the vortex cannon. That was one that stuck out. But then we get to the end of the story and we have this leftover with this immense sense of satisfaction that now he was in the winner's circle. And no matter what his talent was or what he was before this, he is this now. And it can't be taken away from him.
So achievement.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is like this faction, I guess I'd say it's like very into like the loot, the glory, like again, the sense of, you know, achievement and belonging.
And another thing you pull out of the story is that you can't really rest on your laurels once you're in the winner's circle.
Yes,
because you're not the member of the House of Lords now. The House of Lords has to do stuff to justify their existence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you also touched on something there, Nick, that, you know, version alpha everywhere had a single set of rules, you know,
yes,
of how things worked. And in version beta, each of these worlds can have different parameters, like the radiation is an example. So I think you're going to see that, you know, exploring more, like, you know, I know people in chat have talked about, you know, a 2D pixel world, you know, where pixel brokers could, you know, be used. So that opens up all the possibilities for such things.
And I can't wait to see that flexibility because, like you said, radiation world, pixel world, and we also get to explore how the brokers deal with this, something that's brand new to them. After 200 years, you've thought you've done it all and seen it all, and now there's an entire universe that you have to deal with on top of everything else chaotic going on that you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's a good point. They thought they had it all figured out, and they don't.
No, not at all. There'd be no fun then. There'd be no fun story.
So we're almost in an hour. Let's move into the faction discussion, because I think you know, we're kind of stating that's where things are going in the next few weeks here.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of have two that I kind of liken the same. So for me, this actually represents real world in the factions. You know, you have people that are part of government and believe they have the ability to help control things and take care of others, and, you know, for the good of others. That's Wayfarer Bureau. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have the shepherds of Salea, who believe that they want to help humanity in a different way. So rather than controlling it, they want to go off and explore and figure out different ways to do the same thing, kind of. And then we have the winner circle, who's kind of over here and doesn't want any part of either of those, and is more about their own dopamine hits and finding a sense of achievement and glory and, you know, gaming to some degree.
Yeah. So they all have different visions of what this new paradigm should be. So I think this big next question I think we're asking in version beta is, which of these kind of visions of the paradigm is going to come out on top? So I think this is kind of one of our big things that we want to bring the community into is, as we move forward in the paradigm, what, sense, like what words, like what, ethos is going to govern the next version of the paradigm.
Yep. So we're back to time for community input that will drive choices.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think some questions for people to think on are, if you had to join a faction, which one
would you choose?
Yes, which one would you choose?
Nick, you have any willing to state your thoughts on that so far?
Oh, you're going to put me in the hot seat. And
you don't have to. You don't have to.
No, I've been thinking about this for a while, actually. And I am torn between the two extremes of the Shepherds of Selenia and the Wayfarers Bureau. Because they both make good points. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with the Wayfarers Bureau. There needs to be some degree of order to this expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that from how you talk about Requiem and his tower and the order in which things must occur. And
he kind of enjoys the status quo.
Yes, exactly. And Merk and I will poke that for some fun. I can see that. Brianna, how about you? You don't have to if you don't want to.
This is like, if you've ever had to sort yourself in various different fandoms, there's always one I love that I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that one, but I know my personality just doesn't fit it. So like, I love the Winner Circle, but I know for a fact I'd probably be in Shepherds of Selenia. Even though I love the vibe of the Winner Circle, I just know like myself, if I was put in the paradigm, like that's probably where I would gravitate towards.
And I'll complete the circle then, because I would be Winner Circle.
There we go.
I'm all about, I like playing in those other areas, but in the day, give me the dopamine hit and let's go.
Yes. And so this is perfect because this is like what we wanted to do.
And we didn't plan this either. That's the funny part.
Yeah. And I think as we build out these factions, again, like we mentioned, the community is a big part of this, and we've given them these kind of general ethos. But the idea behind these is, as people kind of gravitate towards these factions, like the personality of them will kind of grow. And that's what I think I'm really excited for is, as we wrote the community into this part of our lore, is how it will evolve and like what will, again, what will be those like inside jokes, what will be that personality, like how will these factions evolve.
It's one of those rare cases when you have a place that's 200 years old, is you have something brand new and you don't know what direction its members are going to take it in.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So before we close this out with a little teaser, any other lore things you would like to discuss, Nick? Do you think are important?
We covered everything I wanted to, which is surprising to me because I had a lot I wanted to cover, but we did it pretty damn well.
Awesome. Nick, thank you so much for coming on. I love watching, the writer's room and your conversations and the contributions that I think a lot of the holders don't understand sometimes. So thank you to you in the writer's room for all that you do for CyberBrokers. I think we want to tease a little bit, and we want to end with the difference between quests and missions. Would that be a good discussion, Brianna?
Yes. So version alpha, we had our quests, but as you know, version beta, we rebooted the paradigm. So now we have something called missions.
And I think we should also state this is based upon holder feedback. So the version alpha lore and version alpha quests were the brainchilds of the CyberBrokers staff, and they were something that was new and they had great success.
Mhm.
At the same point, there were a lot of learnings in doing those for the first time. Those group quests were something that had never kind of been done in that format before.
Mhm.
So we got a lot of feedback, and I think you're going to see that the change from quests to missions, as well as chapters to stories, includes a huge amount of that feedback. So missions will be shorter, more some independently achievable without more time frames associated with them, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, we want missions to be approachable. So there will be, certain times where there'll be like puzzles, there will be some collaborative effort, but overall, we want to make sure like individually people feel like they can kind of go in and complete their
When
missions.
they have time, they can show up and complete missions is probably the easiest way to say it.
Yes.
There will be a mix of mission types, I guess is the other way to say it.
Yes.
So like you said, a lot of them will be, you can independently check them off, but there will be times when you need to come together.
Mhm.
And you should probably think about factions because they may come into play.
Yeah. And I think this idea with missions too is, again, just like we're doing the lore now in these short stories, is the lore now is going to be infused in these kind of smaller little bite-sized pieces as well. So you can read the stories to immerse yourself in the lore. You can participate in the missions to immerse yourself in lore. You can do both. You can do everything. We're excited to again build out the world more with these version beta missions.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. The missions aren't as lore connected or story connected
Yes.
as they were in the past. They'll be framed in lore, but not heavy lore. Is probably
Yes.
the way to say it.
Yeah, they're more about like immersing yourself in the universe. And we've kind of hinted about this too. Like I think the winner circle was a good way of like we're really kind of like emphasizing that this is a metaverse world. It has kind of like that video game kind of feel to it. So like how Nick mentioned, like like mentioned more weapons, like we're mentioning these more like missions, challenges, side quests. So we're excited to kind of build that out. So when you kind of come into our community, you get that sense of like adventure and you feel like you're not in the in real life. This is like you want to feel immersed in the metaverse here.
Yeah, and I think that's where we'll end today. Okay, Nick, thank you again so much for popping on. Loved you helping us lead discussion on lore as someone
Thank you for having me.
in the writer's room and is living it every day.
I can't wait to impose taxes on the winner's circle.
That is a perfect ending.
Yes.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.